Get out. Caleb's voice was ice. The woman in front of him, the 23rd this year, looked like he'd slapped her. Mr. Hawthorne, I've come all the way from Denver. I don't care if you walked from New York. You're here for my money, not me. Leave. Her face flushed red. How dare you? I came in good faith. You came because you heard I'm rich and unmarried, same as the last one, and the one before that. He opened the door to the brutal Montana wind. I'd rather die alone than live with someone who sees a bank account instead of a man. She fled in tears. He didn't feel a thing. Until 6 months later, when a woman walked up his drive, asking for nothing at all. Before we continue with this story, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to our channel and stay with me until the end to see how this unfolds. Please comment below with the city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story has traveled. Caleb Hawthorne had built his empire on 3 principles. Trust, no one expect nothing, and never explain yourself to anybody. At 42, he owned more land than most men could ride across in a week. His cattle bore his brand from the Wyoming border to the Canadian line. Banks in Denver knew his signature. Politicians in Helena knew his name. And every matchmaking mother from Billings to Bozeman knew he wasn't interested. You're impossible, his foreman Dutch said that evening. They stood in the stable checking the horses before the temperature dropped further. That woman was perfectly suitable. She giggled, Caleb said. Women giggle. Not around me. Dutch shook his head. You're too particular. I'm particular enough. Caleb ran his hand along his stallion's neck. She looked at my house like she was already rearranging the furniture. Looked at me like I came with the property deed. Maybe you're reading too much into... I'm reading exactly enough. Caleb moved to the next stall. I've seen that look 23 times this year. Different faces, same hunger. They don't want a husband. They want a bank account with a heartbeat. Dutch was quiet for a moment. Not every woman's like Margaret. Caleb's hand stilled on the gate. We don't talk about Margaret. Maybe that's the problem. The problem, Caleb said, his voice dropping to something dangerous, is that people keep assuming I need fixing. I don't. I'm fine exactly as I am. You're alone. By choice. That's what you keep telling yourself. Caleb turned. You got something else to say? Dutch held his gaze. They'd known each other 15 years, long enough for Dutch to recognize when he'd pushed far enough. Storm's coming in, he said finally. Big one. Radio says 3 days of it. Then we'd better get everything secured. They worked in silence after that, the kind of efficient rhythm that came from years of shared labor. But Caleb felt Dutch's words settle into his chest like stones. You're alone. He was. He knew it. But alone was better than used. Margaret had taught him that. He'd been 25 when he met her, young, ambitious, building his first real stake in the territory. She'd been a banker's daughter from St. Louis, visiting an aunt in Helena. Beautiful, educated, charming, everything a young man climbing his way out of nothing could want. You're going to own this whole territory someday, she'd told him once, laughing as they walked along the creek. I can see it in you, that hunger. He'd thought she understood him. She understood his potential, his prospects, his trajectory. When he finally made his first real money, when the land deal started paying off and the cattle contracts came through he'd proposed, she'd said yes so fast it should have been his first warning. The second warning came when she started planning. Not a wedding, a future. Our house in Denver, our winters in San Francisco, our connections in Washington. I'm building something here, he'd told her. In Montana. This is home. This is dirt and cows, she'd replied. You're meant for more than that. I like dirt and cows. You like what they can buy you. That's when he'd realized she didn't see him at all. She saw a version of him that didn't exist yet. A version she was trying to create. He'd ended it. She'd left. And he'd built his empire alone. 17 years later, he was still building alone. And he was fine with that. The wind picked up as they finished with the horses. Caleb stepped out of the stable and looked toward the darkening sky. Snow, already light but steady. Dutch was right. This would be a bad one. He was halfway to the house when he saw her. A woman on foot coming up the long drive toward his ranch. No horse, no wagon, just a figure in a dark coat carrying a single bag, walking like she had every right to be there. Caleb stopped. Dutch appeared beside him. "You expecting someone?" "No. Want me to handle it?" Caleb watched her approach. There was something in the way she walked, not desperate, not pleading, just determined. "I'll do it." He met her at the porch steps. Up close, she was younger than he'd expected, maybe early 30s. Dark hair pulled back severe, face that had seen weather and work, eyes that didn't flinch when they met his. "Mr. Hawthorne." Her voice was quiet but steady. "You're on private property." "I know. I'm looking for work." He almost laughed. "Work?" "Yes. In case you haven't noticed, we're about to be buried in 3 feet of snow." "I noticed." She shifted her bag. "That's why I'm here now, instead of tomorrow." Something in her tone made him pause. Not pleading, not coy, just practical. "What kind of work?" "Any kind. I can cook, clean, mend, work livestock, keep books, whatever you need. I have people for that." "Then you have people who'd appreciate a few days off before the storm hits." Caleb studied her. No paint on her face, no attempt to smile or charm. She just stood there waiting for his decision like she had all the time in the world. "What's your name?" "Emma Reed." "Where are you from, Mrs. Reed?" "Miss," she corrected. "Widow. And I'm from wherever my last job was. Right now that's Billings. Before that Bozeman. Before that Miles City. You move around a lot." "I go where the work is." "Why here?" For the first time, something flickered in her expression. Not embarrassment. Something deeper. "Because I heard you don't ask too many questions." That surprised him. "Who told you that?" "The woman at the mercantile in town said you value competence over conversation." That sounded good to me. Caleb glanced at Dutch, who was watching from the stable door with obvious interest, then back at Emma. "I don't need anyone." "Yes, you do." She said it without challenge, just fact. "Your foreman's got arthritis in his left hand. I saw the way he was favoring it in the stable. Your housekeeper's 60 if she's a day, and 3 days of storm cooking will put her flat on her back. And you—" She stopped. "And I what? You look like a man who's tired of interviews." Something in his chest twisted. She wasn't wrong. "How'd you know about Dutch's hand?" "I pay attention." Emma adjusted her bag again. "Look, Mr. Hawthorne, I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm not here to stay forever. I just need work through the winter, and you need someone who can pull their weight without needing managing. We can help each other. Or I can walk back to town and try the next ranch. Your choice." The snow was falling harder now. Temperature dropping. Town was 7 miles back. "You walked all the way from town." "Yes." "In this weather. It wasn't this bad when I started." Caleb felt something shift in him. Not attraction, not sympathy. Something else. Recognition, maybe. This woman knew what it meant to keep moving forward when stopping meant freezing. "Dutch," he called. His foreman approached. "Get her settled in the guest room above the kitchen. We'll see how she handles tomorrow. If she's useless, she goes when the storm breaks." Emma's expression didn't change. "Fair enough." "Don't make me regret this," Caleb said. "I don't plan to." She followed Dutch toward the house. Caleb watched her go, a strange feeling settling in his gut. Not quite regret, not quite curiosity. Unease. The house was warm when Caleb entered through the back. His housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, was already fussing over Emma like she was a lost daughter. "Skin and bones," Mrs. Chen was saying. "When's the last time you had a proper meal?" "This morning," Emma said. "I'm fine." "You're half frozen. Sit, eat." Caleb hung his coat and watched from the doorway as Emma lowered herself carefully into a chair at the kitchen table. Mrs. Chen was already piling a plate with beef stew and bread. "Thank you," Emma said quietly. This is kind. Kind is getting you here before you froze to death. Mrs. Chen shot Caleb a look. Lucky Mr. Hawthorne has some sense left. Barely, Caleb muttered. Emma looked up at him. Their eyes met. For a moment something passed between them, not understanding exactly. More like acknowledgement. Two people who'd learned not to expect much from the world. She looked away first, focusing on her meal. Caleb left them to it. He had work to finish before the storm hit full force. But all evening, as he reviewed ledgers in his study, he kept thinking about the way Emma had walked up his drive. Not desperate, not defeated, just determined. Like she'd already decided she was staying, and she was just waiting for him to catch up. Cloud. The next morning, Caleb woke to 2 feet of new snow and Emma already working. He found her in the barn hauling feed to the livestock with the same quiet efficiency she'd shown the night before. Dutch was with her showing her the routine, but she barely needed instruction. She's a natural, Dutch said when Caleb approached. Knows her way around animals. Had a farm, Emma said, not looking up from her work. Before. Before what? Caleb asked. Before it wasn't mine anymore. There was a story there. Caleb could feel it. But Emma's tone made it clear she wasn't offering details, and something in him respected that. He understood not wanting to explain your past. We need to check the north pasture fence, he said to Dutch. Storm probably brought down the weak sections. I'll come, Emma said. Both men looked at her. It's hard riding, Dutch warned. Cold. Dangerous. I can ride. I'm sure you can, but I said I'd pull my weight. Emma met Caleb's eyes directly. That means all the work, not just the easy parts. Caleb felt something stir again. Not attraction, not yet, but interest. This woman didn't know how to ask for special treatment. Fine, get your warmest clothes. We leave in 10 minutes. They rode out in near silence, the wind biting through every layer. Emma kept pace without complaint, her seat in the saddle solid and sure. When they reached the north fence, she dismounted and started working before either man could assign her a task. Hand me that wire, Caleb said at one point. Emma passed it to him without a word. Their fingers brushed. Both of them pretended not to notice, but Caleb noticed the calluses on her hands. Noticed the way she moved, economical practice, like someone who'd learned to conserve energy because there was never enough of it. You're good at this, he said. I told you I could work. Most people say that. Few mean it. Emma looked at him. I don't say things I don't mean. Waste of breath. Something in his chest tightened. Agreed. They worked another hour before the wind became too dangerous. On the ride back, Caleb found himself watching her from the corner of his eye. Not her face, her hands. The way she handled the reins. The way she sat the saddle when a gust tried to knock her sideways. She never faltered. That night, Mrs. Chen insisted Emma eat dinner with them in the dining room instead of the kitchen. Emma resisted, I'm staff, but Mrs. Chen was immovable. You worked 12 hours today, the housekeeper said. You eat properly. So Emma sat across from Caleb at the long table, the space between them feeling both vast and somehow too small. Dutch says you're from Montana originally, Caleb said because the silence was starting to feel heavy. Colorado, Emma corrected. Came up here with my husband 5 years ago. He wanted to farm. Past tense. He died 2 years ago. Accident. Caleb set down his fork. I'm sorry. So am I. Emma's voice was steady. But sorry doesn't pay debts. Bank took the farm. I've been working ever since. You could have remarried. Could have. She met his eyes. Didn't want to. Why not? Because the men who asked weren't asking for me. They were asking for labor, for someone to cook and clean and bear children. I spent 3 years being that for my husband. I won't do it for someone I don't even love. The honesty of it hit Caleb like a fist. No apology, no shame, just truth. Fair enough, he said quietly. Emma tilted her head slightly. You understand that, don't you? That's why you turn them all away. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. She cut a piece of beef with precise movements. The women who come here, they see the house, the land, the money. They don't see you. It makes you angry. Caleb's jaw tightened. You're making assumptions. Am I wrong? He wanted to say yes, wanted to tell her she had no right to psychoanalyze him over dinner, but the words wouldn't come, because she wasn't wrong. Eat your food, he said instead. Emma did. But there was something in her expression, not triumph, not satisfaction, just understanding. It unsettled him more than any of her other qualities. The storm lasted 3 days, just like Dutch predicted. 3 days of Emma working alongside them without complaint, without attempting conversation she didn't need, without trying to ingratiate herself to anyone. On the third evening, Caleb found her in the library. She was standing by the window looking out at the endless white, and she didn't hear him approach. Beautiful, isn't it? He said. Emma, startled, turned. I didn't hear you. Sorry, didn't mean to scare you. You didn't. She looked back at the snow. And yes, it's beautiful, also deadly. Both things can be true. Usually are. Emma wrapped her arms around herself. The things that hurt us most are usually the things we find most beautiful. Caleb moved to stand beside her. Not too close, but close enough. That sounds like experience talking. Doesn't it always? They stood in silence for a moment. Then Emma spoke again, her voice quieter. I lied to you. Caleb's pulse jumped. About what? Why I came here? She turned to face him. The woman at the mercantile did say you don't ask questions, but that's not why I chose your ranch. Then why? Emma's eyes held his. Because I heard you were lonely, and I thought, maybe that meant you'd understand. Something in Caleb's chest cracked open. Understand what? What it's like to be surrounded by people who want something from you that you can't give. What it's like to build walls so high you forget there's anything worth protecting inside them. She paused. What it's like to be so tired of pretending that silence feels like relief. Caleb couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. This woman, this stranger, had just reached inside him and named every feeling he'd spent 17 years refusing to acknowledge. You don't know me, he said, but his voice had no strength behind it. I know enough. Emma's expression softened. I know you're afraid. I know you've been hurt. I know you think being alone is safer than being disappointed again. And you're different. No. The honesty in that single word nearly broke him. I'm exactly the same. That's how I recognize it. They stood there trapped in this moment of terrible understanding. Two people who'd built identical prisons finally recognizing their own reflection. I should go, Emma said finally. I'm sorry if I overstepped. She moved toward the door. Caleb's hand shot out, caught her wrist. Not hard, not demanding. Just contact. Don't, he said. Emma froze. Don't what? Don't apologize for telling the truth. He released her wrist slowly. I'm not good at this. At talking. About real things. Neither am I. Then maybe we can be bad at it together. Something flickered in Emma's eyes. Not quite hope, but maybe its cautious younger sister. Maybe. She didn't leave. Neither did he. And for the first time in 17 years, Caleb Hawthorne felt the first crack form in the walls he'd spent so long building. The silence between them lasted too long. Emma finally stepped back, putting distance between herself and whatever was forming in that library. Good night, Mr. Hawthorne. Caleb, he said. If we're being honest with each other, you should call me Caleb. Good night, Caleb. She left before he could say anything else. Before he could make this moment into something bigger than it needed to be. But sleep didn't come easy that night. Caleb lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying her words. I know you're afraid. I know you've been hurt. How did she see it so clearly when he'd spent years making sure no one could? Down the hall. Emma sat by her window watching snow fall in the darkness. Her hands were shaking, not from cold, from the risk she'd just taken. She'd promised herself she wouldn't do this, wouldn't let anyone see the parts of her that still ached, wouldn't open doors she'd worked so hard to lock. But something about Caleb made her forget her own rules. That was dangerous. Morning came with clear skies and brutal cold. Emma was already dressed when Mrs. Chen knocked on her door. "Storm's past," the housekeeper said. "Roads will be clear by tomorrow. If you want to leave—" "I don't," Emma said quickly. Too quickly. "I mean, if Mr. Hawthorne still needs help." "He does." Mrs. Chen's eyes were knowing. "Question is whether you can handle staying." Emma met her gaze. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Means I've worked for Caleb Hawthorne for 12 years. I've seen women come and go. Never seen him look at any of them the way he looked at you last night when you left the library." Emma's stomach dropped. "You were watching." "I was cleaning. You were in my way." Mrs. Chen's expression softened. "I'm not judging. I'm warning. That man's been alone so long he doesn't remember how to not be. You crack that shell, you'd better be ready for what's inside." "I'm not trying to crack anything." "Maybe not, but you're doing it anyway." The housekeeper left. Emma sat down hard on the bed, her heart racing. She should leave, should thank them for the work and walk away before this got complicated. But her feet wouldn't move. Caleb was in the stable when Emma found him. He was brushing down his stallion, his movements methodical, controlled. "We need to talk," she said. He didn't look up. "About last night?" "Yes." "You want to take it back?" "No." Emma moved closer. "I want to make sure we understand each other." Now he looked at her. "I'm listening." "I came here for work. That hasn't changed. Whatever I said last night, whatever I saw in you, it doesn't mean I'm expecting anything." "What if I am?" The question hung between them like smoke. Emma's breath caught. "Expecting what?" Caleb set down the brush. "I don't know. That's the problem. I haven't let myself expect anything from anyone in so long I don't even know what it would look like." "Then don't." Emma kept her voice steady. "Don't expect. Don't plan. Just let things be what they are." "And what are they?" "Two people who understand each other. Maybe that's enough." Caleb studied her face, like he was trying to memorize it. "Is it enough for you?" The honest answer terrified her. "It has to be." "Why?" "Because anything more than that requires trust, and I'm not sure I have any left to give." "Neither am I," Caleb said quietly. "But I'm tired of being afraid of my own life." Emma felt something shift in her chest. "So what do? We work. We talk when we want to. We don't make promises we can't keep." He paused. "And we stop pretending we don't affect each other." It was the most honest offer she'd received in years. "Okay." "Okay?" "Yes." Emma managed a small smile. "But if you turn into one of those men who thinks vulnerability means ownership, I'm gone." "Fair. And if you decide you want more than I can give you, tell me. Don't just disappear. Deal." They shook on it, professional, formal, except their hands lingered a moment too long, and both of them noticed. The next week passed in a rhythm Emma hadn't expected. She worked alongside Caleb and Dutch during the day, feeding livestock, mending fences, managing the books in the evening. But there were moments between the work, conversations that started about cattle prices and ended about childhood. Silences that felt comfortable instead of empty. "You never talk about your husband," Caleb said one evening. They were in his study reviewing supply orders. Emma was across from him making notes. She didn't look up. "There's not much to say." "You were married 3 years. There must be something." Emma set down her pen. "What do you want to know?" Did you love him? The directness of it surprised her. I thought I did. When we met, I was working in my father's store in Denver. James was charming, ambitious, full of plans. He wanted to build something. I wanted to be part of something. It seemed like enough. But it wasn't. He loved the idea of me, the helpmate, the partner in his grand vision. But he never asked what I wanted, what I dreamed about, what scared me. Emma's throat tightened. The day he died, we'd had a fight. He wanted to expand the farm, take out more loans. I told him we couldn't afford it. He said I didn't believe in him. Did you? I believed in reality. He believed in miracles. She met Caleb's eyes. He went out to work the field angry. Equipment failed. By the time I found him, it was too late. Caleb's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes deepened. You blame yourself. Every day. Don't. His voice was firm. I've lost people too. Not the same way, but loss is loss. The guilt will eat you alive if you let it. How do you stop it? You don't. You just learn to carry it better. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. Your turn. Tell me about Margaret. Caleb's jaw tightened. How do you know that name? Dutch mentioned it, once. Then looked like he wanted to take it back. Dutch talks too much. Caleb. Emma leaned forward. Fair's fair. I told you mine. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, Margaret was everything I thought I wanted. Beautiful. Educated. She made me feel like I was more than a ranch hand with ambitions. But she wanted a different version of me. The successful version. The society version. When I told her I wanted to stay in Montana, build something here, she laughed. She laughed. Said I was wasting my potential. Said if I really loved her, I'd want more than dirt and cows. Caleb's voice was bitter. Turns out she loved my potential more than she loved me. I'm sorry. I'm not. She taught me what I needed to know. People will love you for what you can give them, not for who you are. That's not always true. Isn't it? Caleb met her eyes. Name one person who's ever loved you without wanting something in return. Emma opened her mouth, closed it. Couldn't. Exactly, Caleb said. That's a lonely way to live. It's a safe way to live. Safe and lonely aren't opposites, Emma said softly. They're the same thing wearing different faces. Caleb stared at her. Then he stood abruptly. I need to check the north fence. It's dark. I know. He left before she could stop him. Emma sat alone in the study, her heart aching for this man who'd turned self-protection into an art form. She understood him too well. That was the problem. Dutch found her an hour later in the kitchen. He does that, the foreman said. Runs when things get too real. I shouldn't have pushed. No, you should have. Someone needed to. Dutch poured himself coffee. He's been half alive since Margaret. You're the first person who's made him feel anything in years. That scares him. It scares me too. Good. Means you're smart. Dutch studied her. You planning to stay? I don't know. Well, figure it out soon. Because he's already halfway to loving you, and if you leave now, it'll destroy what's left of his heart. Emma's breath stopped. He doesn't love me. We barely know each other. Love's not about time. It's about recognition. Dutch set down his cup. You two recognize each other. That's rarer than you think. He left her with those words echoing in her mind. Caleb came back after midnight. Emma heard him from her room, the heavy boots, the careful quiet of someone trying not to wake the house. She should stay in bed, should let him have his space. Instead, she found herself walking downstairs in her nightgown and wrapper, following the light to the kitchen. He was standing by the stove, still in his coat, staring at nothing. You'll freeze to death standing there, she said. He turned. Saw her. Something crossed his face. Relief, fear. I thought you'd be asleep. I can't sleep when I've hurt someone. You didn't hurt me. Liar. Emma moved closer. I asked a question you weren't ready to answer. I'm sorry. Don't apologize for honesty. It's all we have." They stood there, two people in nightclothes in a kitchen in the middle of nowhere, and Emma felt the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on her chest. "What do you want from me, Caleb?" The question came out raw, desperate. She hadn't meant to ask it. Caleb's expression cracked. "I don't know. That's what terrifies me. I spent 17 years knowing exactly what I wanted, nothing, no one, complete control over my own life. And then you walked up my drive in a snowstorm and suddenly I don't know anything anymore. We can stop this, right now. I can leave tomorrow and you can go back to—" "No." The word was sharp, final. "I don't want that." "Then what do you want?" Caleb crossed the space between them in 3 strides. He didn't touch her, just stood close enough that she could feel the heat coming off him. "I want to know what it's like to trust someone again. I want to stop checking my words before I say them. I want to have dinner with you without wondering if you're calculating what I'm worth. I want—" He stopped. "I want to believe that what I see in you is real." Emma's heart was hammering. "It is real." "How do I know that?" "You don't. That's what trust means." The truth of it hit him visibly. He reached up, almost touched her face, then dropped his hand. "I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I." "Then we'll figure it out together." It wasn't a promise. It was something more fragile than that. An agreement between two damaged people to try not to damage each other further. Emma stepped back before she did something stupid, like kiss him, like let this become something she couldn't control. "Good night, Caleb." "Emma." His voice stopped her at the door. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not running." She smiled sadly. "Give me time." But even as she said it, she knew she wasn't going anywhere. The next morning brought visitors. Emma was hanging laundry when she heard the carriage. A fine thing, black and polished, pulled by matching grays. The kind of carriage that didn't belong on a working ranch. Caleb appeared from the barn, his expression shuddering the moment he saw it. "Who is it?" Dutch asked, coming to stand beside Emma. "Trouble," Caleb said flatly. The carriage door opened. A woman stepped out mid-40s, dressed in expensive furs, her face beautiful in that preserved, careful way that came from money and effort. "Caleb," she said warmly, "it's been too long." Caleb's voice was ice. "Not long enough, Margaret." Emma's stomach dropped. Margaret. The woman who'd broken him. The reason he'd spent 17 years alone. She was here. And from the look on Caleb's face, this wasn't a social call. Margaret's eyes swept the ranch, cataloging, assessing. They landed on Emma. "And who's this?" Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "New help." "Emma Reed," Caleb said tightly. "My employee." "Emma, this is Margaret Thornton." "Shaw now," Margaret corrected. "I remarried, to a senator from California. Perhaps you've heard of him? Richard Shaw." "Can't say I have," Caleb said. "What do you want, Margaret?" "Can't a woman visit an old friend?" "We're not friends. We were more than that once." Margaret moved closer, ignoring Emma completely. "I've come with a business proposition." "Not interested." "You haven't heard it yet." "Don't need to. The answer's no." Margaret's expression hardened slightly. "My husband is interested in investing in Montana cattle operations. I told him you were the best, that you'd be smart enough to recognize an opportunity. I'm smart enough to recognize a trap." "Oh, Caleb." Margaret's laugh was practiced. "Still so suspicious. I'm here to help you." "I don't need your help. I don't need your husband's money. And I don't need you on my property. Go back to California." Margaret's composure cracked for just a moment. Emma saw at the flash of anger, of wounded pride. "You're making a mistake." "Won't be my first. I could have made you something, someone. Instead, you're here playing in the dirt with—" She gestured dismissively at the ranch. This is mine. Everything you see, I built it without you, without anyone. and it's worth more to me than anything your senator could offer." "How noble." Margaret's eyes cut to Emma again. "Tell me, is she part of what you've built? Or is she just another in your long line of rejections?" Emma felt her face flush, but before she could speak, Caleb stepped between them. "You need to leave, now." "Or what?" "Or I'll have Dutch escort you off the property. Your choice." Margaret stared at him for a long moment, then she smiled, cold, calculating. "You know what your problem is, Caleb? You've convinced yourself that being alone makes you strong, but it just makes you afraid. Get out." She climbed back into her carriage without another word. As it pulled away, she looked back once, her eyes finding Emma. The message was clear. "You're nothing. He'll reject you too." Caleb stood rigid, watching until the carriage disappeared. Then he turned and walked into the barn without speaking. Emma looked at Dutch. "Should I give him a minute?" the foreman said quietly. "That woman just reopened every wound he's spent years trying to close." But Emma couldn't just stand there. She followed Caleb into the barn. He was in the back stall, his hands braced against the wall, his breathing harsh. "Caleb, don't." His voice was raw. "Don't try to make this better. I'm not trying to make it better. I'm just here." "Why?" He turned and the pain in his eyes nearly broke her. "Why are you still here? Why aren't you running like every smart person would?" "Because I'm not smart," Emma said. "I'm stubborn, and I don't run from things just because they're hard. She's right, you know. About me. I am afraid." "So am I." "Then why are we doing this?" Emma crossed the space between them. "Because maybe being afraid together is better than being safe alone." Caleb's control finally shattered. He reached for her, pulled her against him, and buried his face in her hair. Not kissing her, just holding on like she was the only thing keeping him upright. Emma wrapped her arms around him and held on just as tight. They stood there, two broken people trying to figure out how to be whole, and for the first time in years, neither of them felt completely alone. "I'm not her," Emma whispered finally. "I don't want to change you. I don't want your money or your status. I just want—" "What?" His voice was muffled against her shoulder. "What do you want?" "This, you, as you are." Caleb pulled back just enough to look at her. His eyes were wet. "That's the first time anyone's ever said that to me. Then everyone else was a fool." He almost smiled. "Almost. Stay, please. I know I have no right to ask, but stay." "I'm not going anywhere." "Promise me." "I promise." It was the first promise either of them had made in years. And despite everything, despite fear and history and every reason not to, they both meant it. They stayed like that until Dutch knocked on the stable door. "Boss, we got a problem." Caleb released Emma slowly, reluctantly. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that involves Margaret's carriage stopped at the property line and a man walking up the drive with papers in his hand." Emma's stomach dropped. "A lawyer. Worse, land surveyor." Caleb's expression went cold. She wouldn't dare. She just did. They met the surveyor at the front gate. He was young, nervous, holding his papers like a shield. "Mr. Hawthorne, I'm Theodore Marsh representing Senator Richard Shaw and his wife Margaret Shaw. I'm here to conduct a survey of the eastern boundary line." "The hell you are," Caleb said. "That boundary's been settled for 20 years. Mrs. Shaw claims there was an error in the original survey. She's provided documentation showing that approximately 200 acres, currently under your claim, actually belong to the adjacent property which her husband recently purchased." Emma watched the color drain from Caleb's face. "What adjacent property?" "The Morrison place," Dutch said quietly. "Been abandoned for 5 years, since old Morrison died." "Margaret bought it," Caleb said. His voice was deadly calm. "She married a senator and came back here to take my land." The surveyor shifted uncomfortably. "I'm just doing my job, sir. If you have documentation proving ownership. I have 20 years of tax records, grazing permits, and water rights. That land is mine." Then the courts will sort it out. The surveyor cleared his throat. In the meantime, I need to complete this survey. Get off my property. Mr. Hawthorne, I have legal authority. Caleb took a step forward. Dutch grabbed his arm. Boss, don't. He's trespassing. He's got papers. You assault him. Margaret wins before the fight even starts. Emma could see Caleb vibrating with rage. She stepped between him and the surveyor. Mr. Marsh, you're clearly uncomfortable being here. Why don't you come back tomorrow with proper notice? Give Mr. Hawthorne time to consult with his own lawyer. The surveyor looked relieved. That's reasonable. I don't care about reasonable, Caleb said. But you care about keeping your land, Emma said quietly. Fighting smart beats, fighting angry. Caleb stared at her. Then at the surveyor. Tomorrow, noon. You step foot on my property. Before then, I'll have the sheriff escort you off. The surveyor left quickly. Caleb watched him go, his jaw so tight, Emma thought he might crack his teeth. She's using her husband's money to destroy me, he said finally. This is revenge. For what? Emma asked. For choosing myself over her. For building something she can't control. For being happy without her. Are you? Dutch asked. Happy. Caleb looked at Emma. Something passed between them. I'm getting there. Then we fight, Emma said. We find a lawyer, we get your documentation together, and we prove that land is yours. Caleb's voice was rough. I'm not leaving. I promised. This isn't your fight. Yes, it is. Emma held his gaze. You let me in. That makes it my fight, too. Dutch grinned. I like her boss. So do I, Caleb said quietly. That's the problem. They spent the afternoon digging through 20 years of records. Emma organized while Caleb explained the history of each piece of land, each boundary marker, each water right, and grazing agreement. Morrison and I had an understanding, he said, pointing to a hand-drawn map. His cattle used this creek mine, used the northern pasture. When he got sick, I bought his water rights, legal and documented. Do you have the bill of sale? Somewhere. Caleb ran a hand through his hair. I never thought I'd need to prove any of this. Margaret knows that land is mine. She was here when I bought half of it. That's why she's challenging it, Emma said. She knows exactly what will hurt you most. Mrs. Chen brought them coffee and sandwiches around sunset. You need to eat, she said firmly. Both of you. Not hungry, Caleb muttered. Eat anyway. Fighting on an empty stomach is stupid. Emma smiled despite everything. She's right. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Caleb spoke. Why is she doing this? She has a senator, husband money status, everything she ever wanted. Why come back here just to hurt me? Because you rejected her, Emma said. Some people can't stand knowing someone chose themselves over choosing them. That's insane. That's pride. Emma set down her sandwich. She thought she could make you into what she wanted. When you refused, it wasn't just rejection. It was proof she didn't have the power she thought she had. So this is about control. It's always about control. Caleb looked at her. Is that what James did? Try to control you? Emma was quiet for a long moment. Not intentionally, but yes. He needed me to believe in his dreams more than I believed in my own doubts. When I couldn't, when I kept asking practical questions, he took it as a betrayal. And you've been carrying that guilt ever since, haven't you? Carrying Margaret's rejection. That's different. Is it? Emma leaned forward. We both chose ourselves over someone else's vision. We both paid for it. We both spent years alone because we were afraid to trust again. How is that different? Caleb opened his mouth, closed it. You're too smart for your own good. Someone has to be smart around here. Despite everything, he almost smiled. Fair point. The door burst open. Dutch stood there breathing hard. Boss, we got bigger problems. What now? Margaret's not just challenging your eastern boundary. She's filed claims on your water rights, your grazing permits, and she's petitioning to have your northern fence removed for illegal encroachment. On what grounds? Says the original Morrison property line extended 3 miles further west than recorded. If she wins, you lose a third of your ranch. The words hit like bullets. Emma watched Caleb process them, saw the moment he understood the full scope of what Margaret was attempting. She's trying to destroy me, he said flatly. Not hurt me. Destroy me. Looks that way, Dutch said grimly. Why? Emma demanded. What does she gain from ruining him? Satisfaction, Caleb said. And my land. Shaw's probably planning to consolidate ranches, sell to the railroad or mining companies. This isn't personal revenge. It's business. It's both, Dutch said. Margaret's too smart to do this without profit motive. But make no mistake, she's enjoying it. Caleb stood abruptly. I need to ride into town, find a lawyer, tonight. It's dark, Emma said. I don't care. Then I'm coming with you. No. Yes. Emma grabbed her coat. You're angry and you're hurt and you're about to make decisions that could cost you everything. You need someone thinking clearly. I'm thinking fine. You're thinking with rage. There's a difference. Caleb stared at her. For a moment, Emma thought he'd refuse. Then his shoulders sagged slightly. Fine, but we leave now. They rode into town in tense silence. The temperature had dropped again, and Emma's breath came out in clouds. Beside her, Caleb sat rigid in the saddle, his mind clearly racing through scenarios. Talk to me, Emma said finally. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I should have seen this coming. Margaret never forgave me for choosing this life. I humiliated her in front of her social circle when I ended our engagement. She's been waiting 17 years to even the score. And her husband probably doesn't even know the history, just sees a profitable land acquisition. So we make sure everyone knows the history. We expose her motives. Caleb shook his head. Won't matter in court. Judge doesn't care about old grudges, just legal documentation. Then we make sure your documentation is airtight. And if it's not, Emma reached over, touched his arm. Then we fight anyway. But we don't assume defeat before the battle starts. His hand covered hers briefly. How are you so calm? I'm not. I'm terrified. But I learned something when James died. Panic doesn't solve problems. Action does. I'm glad you're here, Caleb said quietly. So am I. They reached town after dark. The lawyer's office was closed, but Caleb knew where he lived. They knocked on the door of a small house on the edge of town. A man in his 50s answered, looking annoyed. Hawthorne. It's past 9. I know, Frank. I need help. Frank Brennan, attorney at law, listened to the situation with increasing concern. Margaret Thornton Shaw. I mean, she's playing for keeps. If her documentation shows even a shadow of a legitimate claim, this could drag out for months. I don't have months, Caleb said. Spring roundup starts in 6 weeks. If I can't graze those northern pastures, I lose everything. Then we need to move fast. I'll file a counterclaim tomorrow, request an emergency hearing. Frank looked at Emma. Who's this? Emma Reed. My... Caleb hesitated. Business partner. Emma finished smoothly. I've been helping organize his records. Frank's eyes sharpened. You good with details? Very. Then I need you both here tomorrow morning. Bring every document you have relating to those land purchases. Every map, every bill of sale, every tax record. We're going to build a wall of proof so high Margaret can't climb over it. They left Frank's house near midnight. The streets were empty cold. Emma was exhausted, but Caleb looked wired, running on anger and adrenaline. Thank you, he said as they mounted their horses. For coming with me, for staying calm, for... He stopped. For being here. I told you, I'm not going anywhere. Even if this gets ugly, because it will. Margaret fights dirty. So do I. Emma met his eyes. You're not alone in this, Caleb. Stop acting like you are. Something in his expression cracked. I'm not used to having someone on my side. Get used to it. They rode back to the ranch in silence, but it was different now. Not tense. Almost peaceful. Despite the storm coming, despite Margaret's machinations, despite everything, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The next morning brought the surveyor back, this time with Margaret herself. Emma watched from the window as Caleb went out to meet them. She started to follow, but Mrs. Chen stopped her. Let him handle this part, the housekeeper said. He needs to prove to himself he can face her. What if she provokes him? Then you step in, but give him a chance first. Emma watched as Caleb approached Margaret. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in his body. I thought I told you to stay off my property, Caleb said. Margaret smiled. This won't be your property much longer. You should get used to seeing me here. The courts haven't ruled yet. They will. I have documentation proving my claim. Do you? I have 20 years of legal ownership. What do you have? Forged papers and wounded pride. Margaret's smile vanished. Careful, Caleb. Accusations like that can get expensive. So can legal battles. Hope your senator husband's pockets are deep. Deeper than yours. We both know you leveraged everything to expand your holdings. One bad season and you're finished. This lawsuit will just speed up the inevitable. Emma saw Caleb's hands clench. She was out the door before she could stop herself. Mrs. Shaw, she said pleasantly, I'm sure you're busy. Why don't you let your surveyor do his work while Mr. Hawthorne and I get back to organizing his documentation for court? Margaret's eyes cut to her. Still here, I thought you'd be smart enough to run by now. I'm not much for running. Then you're a fool. This ranch will be bankrupt within 6 months. When it is, he'll have nothing left to offer you. I'm not here for what he can offer me, Emma said quietly. I'm here because I choose to be. How touching! Margaret's voice dripped scorn. Tell me, does he know you're just another charity case? Another lost woman looking for a man to save her? I don't need saving, Emma said. Neither does he. We just need each other. Margaret laughed. You really believe that he's using you, darling, just like he'll use anyone who's stupid enough to get close. When this is over, when he's lost everything, he'll blame you for distracting him, for not being enough. Emma felt the words hit her chest like stones, felt her old fears stir. But then she looked at Caleb, saw the way he was watching her, not with calculation, not with need, with something else. Trust. You're wrong, Emma said. About him, about me, about all of it. Am I? Margaret moved closer. Let me tell you what I know about Caleb Hawthorne. He's a man who holds grudges like other people hold treasure. He never forgets a slight, never forgives a betrayal. And the moment you fail him, and you will fail him, everyone does, he'll cut you out of his life like you never existed. If that's true, Emma said, why are you here? Why go through all this trouble for a man who cut you out 17 years ago? Margaret's composure slipped, just for a second, but Emma saw it. Because I'm owed, Margaret said. I gave him everything, my time, my affection, my future. He threw it back in my face. Now I'm taking what should have been mine from the beginning. This was never yours, Caleb said, his voice hard. None of it. Not the land, not me. You wanted a puppet, not a partner. And when I refused to perform, you left. You don't get to rewrite that history now. I left because you were too stubborn to see what you could become. I became exactly what I wanted to be. That's what you can't forgive. Margaret's mask fell completely. You could have had everything. My father's connections, my social circle, a life that mattered. Instead, you chose this: isolation, cattle, dirt. I chose freedom, Caleb said. From you, from your expectations, from the cage you called love. And look where it got you, alone, fighting to keep land that's going to be mine anyway. Was it worth it, Caleb? He looked at Emma, then back at Margaret. Yes, every second of it. Margaret's face twisted. We'll see how you feel when you're watching me walk these fields, when you're broken and bankrupt and forgotten. I'd rather be broken and free than whole and owned. Then I'll break you." She turned to the surveyor. "Start your work. Document everything. I want every inch recorded." She climbed back into her carriage and left without another word. Caleb stood watching until she was gone. Then his knees buckled slightly. Emma caught him. "I've got you," she said. "I thought I was over her, over what she did." "You are. That wasn't about her. That was about defending what's yours." Caleb looked at her. "Are you mine?" The question hung between them, terrifying and essential. "I don't know," Emma said honestly. "But I know I want to be." He kissed her then. Not gentle, not soft. Desperate and deep and full of 17 years of loneliness, finally finding its end. When they broke apart, both of them were shaking. "I'm in love with you," Caleb said. "I don't know how it happened or when, but I am. And I need you to know that before this gets worse, before Margaret takes everything, I need you to know you're the only thing that matters." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too, and I'm terrified. So am I. What do? We fight, we survive, and we don't let her take what's ours." Emma nodded. Together. Together. They walked back to the house, hand in hand. Behind them, the surveyor worked documenting the land Margaret claimed was hers. But Emma wasn't afraid anymore. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. And that made all the difference. The hearing was set for 3 weeks out. 3 weeks of Frank Brennan working 18-hour days of Emma organizing documents until her eyes burned of Caleb writing his property line, like a man trying to memorize every inch before it was taken from him. "We need the original Morrison deed," Frank said on day 5. "Without it, we can't prove where his property actually ended and yours began." "Morrison's daughter has it," Caleb said. "She moved to Oregon after he died." "Then find her. Fast." Emma spent 2 days tracking down Sarah Morrison through telegraph offices and county records. When she finally made contact, the woman's response was brief. "I burned everything related to that ranch. Too many bad memories." She burned it, Emma told Caleb that evening. They were in his study, surrounded by maps and legal documents. The one piece of evidence we needed most. Caleb's fist came down on the desk. Margaret knew. She knew Sarah hated that place. That's why she's challenging this specific boundary. Then we prove it another way. Water rights, tax records, witness testimony. Who's going to testify Morrison's been dead 5 years? Everyone who knew the original boundaries is either gone or doesn't want to get involved in a legal battle with a senator's wife. Emma grabbed his hand. "Stop. We're not giving up." "I'm not giving up. I'm being realistic. Margaret has unlimited resources and political connections. I have a failing ranch and a lawyer who's good but not miracle worker good. You have me. That's not enough." The words hit her like a slap. Caleb must have seen it in her face because he immediately reached for her. "I didn't mean, Emma, that's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" "I meant I can't ask you to go down with this ship. You should leave. Find somewhere safe before this destroys everything." "I'm not leaving." "You should." "Why?" "So you can prove Margaret right, that you end up alone because you push everyone away." Caleb pulled back. "That's not fair. None of this is fair. But I'm here anyway. Stop trying to protect me from your life and let me be part of it." "What if there's nothing left to be part of?" "Then we'll build something new, together." He stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. "I don't know how to lose." "Then don't." The next morning brought worse news. Dutch came in holding a letter, his face grim. "Bank's calling in your loans," he said. "All of them. They want payment in full within 60 days. Caleb went white. "That's not possible. Those loans aren't due for 2 years. "Apparently there's a clause about property disputes.
Bank considers your land value uncertain, so they're exercising their right to demand immediate repayment. Let me guess, Emma said. Margaret's husband has friends at the bank. The bank president plays golf with Senator Shaw twice a month.
Caleb sat down hard. How much? Dutch handed him the letter. Caleb read it, and Emma watched the color drain completely from his face. $47,000. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Can you raise it? Emma asked. Not in 60 days. I'd have to sell everything. The land, the cattle, the equipment. Everything. And even then... He looked up, his eyes hollow. Even then, I'd barely break even. So this was her plan all along, Dutch said. Challenge the land to trigger the loan clause. Force you to sell at a loss. Then buy it all for pennies on the dollar. It's brilliant, Caleb said bitterly. Destroy me financially while claiming the moral high ground of settling a property dispute. By the time the courts rule in my favor, if they rule in my favor, I'll be too bankrupt to care. Emma's mind was racing. What if you don't wait for the courts? What if you sell before the deadline? To who anyone willing to buy disputed land will lowball me so hard, I'll still lose everything. Not if you sell to someone who's buying it for reasons other than profit. Caleb looked at her. What are you saying? I'm saying Margaret wants this land because it represents you. Your success. Your independence. What if you take that power away by selling it to someone who'll work with you instead of against you? I don't have anyone like that. What about your neighbors? The other ranchers. If Margaret consolidates all this land, she'll control water rights and grazing routes for half the territory. That affects them too. Dutch's eyes lit up. She's right. Tom Bradley's been fighting access issues for years. And the Miller brothers always said Morrison's old property created a bottleneck for their herds. So we go to them, Emma said. We offer them partnership instead of buyout. They help you pay off the loans you give them, stake in the ranch, and guaranteed access rights. That's still selling, Caleb said. No, it's adapting, it's surviving, and it means Margaret doesn't win. Caleb stood, abruptly started pacing. Even if they agree, and that's a big if, it means I lose sole ownership, lose control. You lose control, or you lose everything. Choose. Why are you pushing this? Because I love you, Emma said fiercely, and I'm watching you drown in pride instead of grabbing the rope. Your land matters, your legacy matters, but you matter more. And you can't keep your legacy if you're too stubborn to accept help. Caleb stopped pacing, looked at her. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You're just finally listening. Despite everything, he almost smiled. Fine. We talk to the neighbors. But if this backfires, it won't. You don't know that. No. But I believe it. That has to be enough. They rode out that afternoon, hitting every ranch within a day's ride. Tom Bradley listened to their proposal with interest. The Miller brothers were skeptical, but willing to talk. By evening, they'd secured tentative agreements from 3 neighboring ranchers, enough to cover most of the loan if the deals went through. But that night, everything changed. Emma woke to shouting. She ran downstairs to find Caleb and Dutch in the kitchen. Dutch's face bloodied, Caleb white with rage. What happened? Someone jumped Dutch in town, Caleb said, his voice shaking. Beat him, told him to give me a message. What message? Dutch spat blood into the sink. They said if you don't drop the legal challenge and sell to Mrs. Shaw next time, they won't stop at my face. Emma's blood ran cold. Margaret hired thugs. Can't prove it, Dutch said, but the timing's pretty damn convenient. We're going to the sheriff, Emma said. Sheriff won't do anything without proof, Caleb said. And even if he would, Margaret's husband probably has him in his pocket too. So what do we do? Caleb's expression was harder than Emma had ever seen it. We don't back down, we don't give them the satisfaction, and we make damn sure everyone knows what kind of people we're dealing with. That's dangerous, Dutch said. Everything's dangerous now. Might as well control the narrative. The next morning, Caleb rode into town and went straight to the newspaper office. Emma went with him. I want to buy a full-page advertisement, he told the editor. and I want you to print exactly what I tell you." The advertisement ran 2 days later. It detailed Margaret's land grab, the convenient loan calls, the assault on Dutch. It stopped short of direct accusations but laid out the timeline in damning detail. The town exploded. Some people sided with Margaret. She was married to a senator after all. But others remembered Caleb building his ranch from nothing, remembered him employing locals, remembered him being fair when others weren't. And they remembered Margaret leaving 17 years ago because Caleb wasn't rich enough for her tastes. The newspaper editor called it the juiciest scandal since statehood. Margaret called it slander. She filed a lawsuit for defamation within hours. Frank Brennan nearly had a heart attack. "You can't afford another legal battle," he said. "You barely have the resources for the first one." "I don't care," Caleb said. "She threatened my people. That's a line you don't cross. She'll bury you. Let her try." Emma pulled him aside. "He's right. This is escalating too fast." "Good. I'm tired of playing defense. Time to make her react to me instead of the other way around. What if this backfires? Then I go down fighting. At least I'll go down on my own terms." Emma saw the determination in his eyes, also saw the fear underneath it. This was a man who'd rather burn everything down than surrender. She loved him for it, but she was also terrified. The defamation suit and the land dispute were scheduled to be heard together. Frank argued for separation, but the judge, a man who'd received significant campaign donations from Richard Shaw, denied the motion. "We're being railroaded," Frank said after the hearing. "Every decision is going against us. Every delay, every procedural motion. The fix is in." "Then we appeal," Caleb said. "To who? The Territorial Supreme Court. That'll take months we don't have." Caleb slammed his hand against the courthouse wall. "There has to be something." "There is," Emma said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "We go public, bigger than a newspaper ad. We make this a story that reaches beyond Montana." "How?" Frank asked. "We contact journalists in Denver, San Francisco, even New York. Make this about a senator's wife using political power to settle personal grudges. Make it scandalous enough that Richard Shaw has to distance himself to protect his reputation." "That's risky," Frank said. "If it doesn't work, you've just made powerful enemies." "We already have powerful enemies," Emma said. "At least this way we control the story." Caleb looked at her with something like awe. "You're incredible." "I'm desperate. There's a difference." "No," he said softly. "You're incredible." They spent the next week contacting every journalist they could find. Most ignored them. Some were interested but wouldn't touch it without proof. But three hungry reporters looking for their big break took the bait. Articles started appearing in papers across the West. Senator's wife wages legal war against former fiancé. Montana ranch owner fights back against political intimidation. Is this love turned vendetta? Richard Shaw started getting questions from his colleagues. Margaret was furious. And then everything fell apart. The neighboring ranchers pulled out of their deals, all of them, within 2 days. Tom Bradley came to the ranch himself to deliver the news. "I'm sorry, Caleb. Margaret's people contacted me. Said if I went through with our agreement, they'd make sure I couldn't get credit anywhere in the territory. I can't risk it." "Tom, I'm sorry. I truly am. But I have a family to think about." One by one, they all backed out. Fear of Margaret's reach, of Shaw's political power, of being associated with a losing fight. Within a week, Caleb was back where he started. No way to pay the loans, no partnership deals, no options left. "We could fight the loan terms," Frank suggested weakly. "Argue the bank acted in bad faith." "That'll take months. I have 6 weeks. Then we need a miracle." Caleb laughed bitterly. "I don't believe in miracles." That night, Emma found him in the barn sitting in the dark. "Talk to me," she said. "I'm going to lose everything. The ranch, the land, everything I built. And there's nothing I can do to stop it." "There's always something." "Not this time." He looked at her, and his eyes were dead. Margaret won. She finally won. No, she hasn't. Not while you're still fighting. I'm not fighting anymore, Emma. I'm done. The words hit her like a physical blow. You don't mean that. I do. I'm tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of struggling. Tired of watching everything I care about get destroyed because I was too proud to bend. So, what are you saying? I'm saying I'll sell to Margaret. Give her what she wants. At least then I'll get enough to start over somewhere else. Emma felt her world tilt. You're giving up. I'm surviving. By surrendering everything you are. What I am is beaten, Emma. Can't you see that? No. She grabbed his shoulders, forced him to look at her. What I see is a man who's scared, who's been hurt so many times he'd rather quit than risk failing one more time. But that's not who you are. That's what Margaret made you believe you are. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You think being alone kept you safe, that not needing anyone meant you couldn't be hurt. But you're wrong. Being alone just meant suffering alone, failing alone, dying alone. Stop. No. You told me you loved me. You told me we'd fight this together. Was that a lie? Of course not. Then fight. Not for the land, not for pride. For us. For what we could be if you'd just let yourself believe in something other than control. Caleb pulled away from her. What if I can't? What if I've been alone so long I don't know how to be anything else? Then I'll teach you. The same way you're teaching me to trust again. The same way we've been teaching each other every day that we're not defined by our worst moments. I'm going to disappoint you. Probably. And I'll disappoint you too. That's what people do. But disappointment isn't betrayal. And failure isn't the end unless you let it be. Caleb's face crumpled. I don't know if I'm strong enough. You don't have to be. That's what I'm here for. That's what love means, carrying each other when we're too tired to walk alone. He reached for her, then desperately, like she was the only solid thing in his world. Emma held him while he shook, while 17 years of self-imposed isolation finally broke open and bled out. I'm so scared, he whispered. I know. Me too. What if we lose everything? Then we'll have each other, and we'll build something new. You keep saying that like you believe it. I do believe it, because I've lost everything before, and I survived. We'll survive this too. Caleb pulled back, looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. How did I get so lucky to find you? You didn't find me. I found you, and I'm not letting go. Promise. I promise. He kissed her, then soft and broken and full of hope that refused to die. And Emma knew whatever happened next, whatever Margaret threw at them, whatever the courts decided they would face it together, that was worth more than all the land in Montana. They walked back to the house hand in hand, neither speaking, both knowing something fundamental had shifted between them. Not just love, trust. The kind that came from being seen at your worst and chosen anyway. Mrs. Chen was waiting in the kitchen with coffee. She took one look at their faces and nodded. About time you two stopped pretending. Pretending what? Caleb asked. That you could survive this alone. She poured 3 cups. Now sit. We have work to do. Mrs. Chen. I've worked for you 12 years, Caleb Hawthorne. Never once told you what to do. But I'm telling you now, stop acting like a martyr and start acting like a man with something to fight for. Emma squeezed his hand. She's right. Everyone's right except me, Caleb muttered, but he sat. Frank called while you were in the barn, Mrs. Chen said. Margaret's lawyer filed another motion. They want the hearing moved up, 2 weeks instead of 3. She's trying to squeeze us, Emma said. Less time to prepare means better chance we'll make mistakes. Or give up entirely. Dutch added, appearing in the doorway. His eye was still swollen from the beating. That's her pattern. Pressure from all sides until you crack. Then we don't crack, Caleb said. His voice was stronger now. What do we have left? Tax records going back 23 years, Emma said. Grazing permits,
water rights documentation, and 3 ranchers who pulled out but might testify if subpoenaed. They'll lie to protect themselves. Maybe, maybe not. Fear works both ways. If we make Margaret look bad enough, they might decide honesty is safer than loyalty to someone who could turn on them next. Caleb looked at her with something like pride. When did you become a strategist? When I decided losing wasn't an option. The kitchen door banged open. Frank Brennan stood there breathing hard, holding a telegram. We have a problem. A big one. What now? Caleb asked. Richard Shaw's coming to Montana, personally. He'll be at the hearing. The room went silent. Why? Emma asked. To support his wife's claim, to make sure the judge knows whose side matters. Frank sat down heavily. This isn't just a local land dispute anymore. It's a senator making a statement about property rights and political power. We can't win this. Then we change the game, Emma said. Everyone looked at her. She was thinking fast pieces clicking together. Margaret's weapon is her husband's influence. What if we turn that weapon against her? How? Frank asked. Shaw's a politician. Politicians care about perception. Right now, this looks like a legal property dispute. What if we make it look like a vindictive wife using her husband's power to settle personal scores? We've already tried that angle. The newspapers weren't enough. But having Shaw here in person, that changes things. We can make him look complicit. Make him choose between supporting his wife or protecting his reputation. Caleb was staring at her. That's dangerous. Everything's dangerous, but if we're going down, we're taking Margaret with us. Frank leaned forward. What are you proposing? We get proof that Margaret's motivation is personal, not legal. We expose her in front of her husband in court, where she can't hide behind lawyers and paperwork. What kind of proof? Emma thought for a moment. Then, letters. There have to be letters from 17 years ago, when Caleb ended the engagement, when Margaret left. Correspondence that shows her real feelings. I burned everything, Caleb said. But did she rich women keep letters, diaries, evidence of their social triumphs and failures? If we can find them, we can prove this whole thing is revenge, Frank finished. But how do we get access to her personal papers? We don't, Emma said. We make her produce them herself. Explain. We depose her, force her to testify about the engagement, about why she left, about her feelings toward Caleb. If she's under oath, she either tells the truth and exposes her motives, or she lies and we catch her in it. Frank was nodding slowly. It's risky. Her lawyers will fight the deposition. But if we frame it as relevant to her claim, if we argue her personal history with Caleb affects her credibility as a plaintiff, the judge might allow it. Might, Caleb said. It's better than nothing, Dutch said. It's better than surrender, Emma said. Caleb looked at each of them. His people, his family. Not blood, but chosen. Do it. File the motion. Let's bring her down. The next week was chaos. Frank filed for Margaret's deposition. Her lawyers screamed objection. The judge surprisingly allowed limited questioning about her prior relationship with Caleb. He's covering his bases, Frank said. If this blows up into a bigger scandal, he wants to be able to say he allowed both sides to present evidence. The deposition was scheduled for 2 days before the hearing. Margaret arrived in full armor, expensive dress, perfect hair, her husband's lawyer flanking her own. Emma watched from the corner as Frank began. Mrs. Shaw, how long were you engaged to Mr. Hawthorne? 6 months. And why did the engagement end? Mutual decision. We wanted different things. Did you want him to leave Montana? Margaret's lawyer interjected. Irrelevant. I'll allow it, the judge said. Margaret's smile was ice. I wanted him to reach his potential. He wanted to stay small. Small, Frank repeated. Interesting word choice. Would you say you viewed his ambitions as inadequate? I viewed them as limited. And when he chose his limitations over your vision, how did that make you feel? Disappointed. Angry. Objection, Margaret's lawyer said. Counsel is badgering. Withdrawn. Mrs. Shaw, did you keep correspondence from that period? Letters, diary entries? Anything documenting your feelings." Margaret hesitated. Just for a second. "No." "You're certain?" "Yes." Frank nodded. "Thank you. No further questions." Outside the deposition, Emma pulled him aside. "She lied. You saw it." "I saw it, but proving it is different. We need those letters. They're in California, in her house. We have no way to access them." Emma thought for a moment. Then, what if someone else did? Who? Someone she trusts. Someone with access to her home. Emma's mind was racing. She has staff, housekeepers, people who might talk if the price was right. That's unethical. So is using political power to destroy someone's life. We're past ethics, Frank. We're in survival. Frank looked at Caleb, who was watching Margaret through the window. "What do you think, boss?" Caleb turned. His expression was harder than Emma had ever seen it. "Do whatever it takes. I'm done playing fair with people who never had honor to begin with." Emma sent telegrams that night, to contacts in San Francisco, to people who worked in wealthy households, offering money for information about Margaret Shaw's personal papers. 3 days later, she got a response. A housekeeper older woman recently dismissed by Margaret for incompetence had kept copies of certain letters. Insurance, she called it. Against being blamed for things she didn't do. The letters arrived by express mail the day before the hearing. Emma read them with shaking hands, then handed them to Caleb. His face went white. "This is worse than I thought." The letters were vicious. Margaret writing to her sister about Caleb, calling him my project, my investment, the man I'm creating. One letter dated a week after the engagement ended was particularly damning. "He'll regret this. He'll spend his whole life wondering what he could have been if he'd chosen me. And if I ever get the chance, I'll make sure he knows exactly what he threw away." She planned this, Emma said. Not for 17 years, but the seeds were always there. The revenge, the hatred. "Can we use these in court?" Caleb asked Frank. The lawyer was reading through them, his expression grim. "They're hearsay, might not be admissible, but if we can authenticate them, prove they're really hers, and if we can get her to acknowledge them under oath." "She'll deny writing them," Dutch said. "Maybe," Frank said. "Or maybe her pride won't let her. These letters show her intelligence, her ambition. She might claim them just to prove she was right about Caleb all along." "That's a gamble," Caleb said. "Everything's a gamble now." The hearing the next morning was packed. Word had spread. Local ranchers, townspeople, even journalists from Denver and San Francisco. Everyone wanted to see the showdown between the Montana rancher and the senator's wife. Richard Shaw sat at the front row. Emma studied him mid-50s, polished his expression carefully neutral. He looked like a man who didn't know quite what he'd gotten himself into. The judge called the court to order. Margaret's lawyer presented first. Maps, surveys, documentation claiming the boundary dispute. It was all very professional, very proper. Then Frank stood up. "Your Honor, I'd like to call Mrs. Margaret Shaw to the stand." Her lawyer objected. "Mrs. Shaw is the plaintiff, not a witness." "She's both," Frank said. "Her credibility is central to this case. The defense has a right to cross-examine." The judge allowed it. Margaret took the stand, her composure perfect. Frank started gently. "Mrs. Shaw, you've claimed that 200 acres of Mr. Hawthorne's land rightfully belongs to the Morrison property your husband purchased. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And you've lived in California for the past 15 years, correct?" "Yes." "Yet you're intimately familiar with property boundaries in Montana that were established 30 years ago." "I've done my research." "Have you? Or is this about something else entirely?" Frank produced the letters. "I'd like to enter these into evidence. Letters written by Margaret Thornton, now Shaw, 17 years ago." Margaret's composure cracked. "Where did you get those? Are you acknowledging they're yours?" Those are private correspondence." "That you kept. Why keep letters about a failed engagement if it meant nothing to you?" Margaret's lawyer was shouting objections. The judge was banging his gavel. But Emma watched Richard Shaw. watched his face as he realized his wife hadn't been honest with him.
"Mrs. Shaw," Frank said when order was restored. "In one of these letters you wrote, 'If I ever get the chance, I'll make sure he knows what he threw away.' Did you write that? Context matters." "I agree. The context is that you've held a grudge for 17 years, and now, using your husband's political power and money, you're executing a revenge plan disguised as a property dispute." "That's absurd, is it? Because from where I'm standing, everything you've done, the timing, the specific properties challenge the loan manipulations. It all points to personal vendetta, not legitimate legal claim." Margaret stood up. "He humiliated me. He chose dirt over me, over everything I offered him. He deserved to suffer the way I suffered." The courtroom exploded. Richard Shaw's face went purple. Margaret's lawyer was trying to control his client, but she was past controlling. "You want to know why I'm doing this?" Margaret shouted at Caleb. "Because you made me feel worthless. Because you looked at everything I was and decided it wasn't enough. Well, look at you now, losing everything. How does it feel, Caleb? How does it feel to have nothing?" Caleb stood slowly. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried. "I don't have nothing, Margaret. I have something you'll never understand. I have people who chose me because of who I am, not what I can give them. I have land I built with my own hands. And I have love that doesn't come with conditions." He looked at Emma. "You can take the land, take the money, take everything material. But you can't take what matters. You never could." The judge was banging his gavel again, trying to restore order. But Emma saw the moment Richard Shaw understood he'd been used, saw him stand up and walk out of the courtroom without looking back at his wife. Margaret saw it too. Her face crumpled. All her armor, all her rage, all her carefully maintained composure gone in an instant. "I think we're done here," the judge said. "I'm dismissing Mrs. Shaw's claim with prejudice. The land belongs to Mr. Hawthorne as it always has. As for the defamation suit, also dismissed. And Mrs. Shaw, you're lucky I'm not holding you in contempt." The courtroom erupted. Emma pushed through the crowd to reach Caleb. He caught her, held her, buried his face in her hair. "We won," she whispered. "You won," he said. "You saved me." "We saved each other." Outside the courthouse, Richard Shaw was waiting. He approached Caleb directly. "I didn't know," the senator said, "about any of it. The personal history, her true motivations. I thought this was a legitimate investment." "Did you know about the loan manipulation?" Caleb asked. Shaw's jaw tightened. "I suspected. I confronted her about it last week. She assured me it was legal maneuvering. I should have pushed harder." "Yes, you should have. For what it's worth, I'm calling the bank. The loans will be restructured to their original terms, and I'm dissolving the Morrison property purchase. The land will be available if you want to buy it at fair market value." "Why would you do that?" "Because my wife used me to hurt someone who didn't deserve it. That's on me for not asking harder questions. Consider it an apology." He walked away without waiting for a response. Emma watched him go. "What will happen to Margaret?" "She'll divorce him," Caleb said. "Or he'll divorce her. Either way, she loses the power she used against me. That's punishment enough." "Is it?" Caleb looked at her. "I don't want revenge anymore. I just want to move forward. With you." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "I want that too." They were married 3 months later in the ranch house parlor. Small ceremony. Dutch stood up for Caleb. Mrs. Chen cried through the whole thing. Frank Brennan officiated, his fee waived as a wedding gift. "You sure about this?" Caleb asked Emma the night before the wedding. They were sitting on the porch watching the sun set over land that was finally truly his. "Which part?" "Marrying you. Building a life here, choosing you over every safe, easy option." "All of it. I've never been more sure of anything. I'm difficult, stubborn. I have terrible habits and I don't always talk about my feelings. I know. I'm difficult too. Stubborn too. I overthink everything and I'm terrified of depending on people." "We're a mess," Caleb said. "We're perfect for each other." He kissed her, then soft and sweet, and full of promises neither of them would break. The next day, as she walked toward him in the parlor, Emma thought about the path that had brought her here. The loss, the grief, the years of surviving instead of living. The winter storm that had led her to Caleb's door. She'd been looking for work. She'd found home. Caleb watched her approach, and his eyes told her everything she needed to know. This man who'd turned away every bride who'd built walls so high he thought they were unbreakable had chosen her, not for what she could give him, for who she was. "I love you," she said when she reached him. "I love you too," he said. "Every stubborn, brilliant, impossible part of you." They said their vows, promised forever, promised honesty, promised to keep choosing each other even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Later, when the guests had left and they were alone in the house that was now theirs together, Caleb pulled Emma close. "Thank you," he said. "For what? For not running, for seeing me when I couldn't see myself, for teaching me that being alone isn't the same as being safe. You taught me the same thing." "Then we're even." "No," Emma said, smiling. "We're better than even. We're together." And in the years that followed, through good seasons and hard ones, through challenges and triumphs and everything in between, that remained true. They built their life side by side, expanding the ranch, welcoming children, creating a home filled with laughter and love, and the kind of honest, imperfect partnership that only comes from two people who've been broken and chose to heal together. Margaret disappeared from their lives completely. Her marriage ended, her reputation in ruins. They never spoke of her again. She wasn't worth the breath. The ranch prospered, the land, every contested acre remained theirs. And more importantly, remained a symbol not of conquest, but of resilience. Of what happens when you stop running from connection and start running toward it. Years later, when people asked Emma why she'd stayed that first winter, why she'd fought for a man she barely knew, she always gave the same answer: "Because I recognized him. Because we were both so afraid of needing someone that we'd convinced ourselves solitude was strength. And because sometimes love isn't about finding someone perfect, it's about finding someone whose scars fit yours." Caleb Hawthorne turned away every bride who came seeking his wealth and status. But when a quiet woman walked up his drive asking for nothing except a chance to be seen, he finally understood what he'd been missing all along: someone who loved him, not for what he had built, but for who he was, underneath all the walls he'd constructed, to protect a heart that had been waiting all this time to be chosen for all the right reasons.